Pallas Athene now went to the broad vale of Lacedaemon to remind great-hearted Odysseus's noble son that it was time for him to return and to hasten his departure. She found Telemachus and Prince Pisistratus lying in great Menelaus's portico. Nestor's son was sound asleep, but sweet sleep had deserted Telemachus, for anxiety on his father's behalf kept him wakeful all through the ambrosial night. The bright-eyed goddess stood near him and said, "Telemachus, it is wrong of you to linger abroad and leave your property unguarded with such a rabble in your house. They might well share out and eat up all you have, and so make your journey futile. Urge your host, Menelaus of the loud war cry, to let you go at once, if you wish to find your noble mother still in the palace. For her father and brothers are already pressing her to marry Eurymachus, who outdoes all the rest of her suitors in his gifts to her and keeps offering larger and larger marriage settlements. There is also the danger that she might carry off some of your own things from the house without your permission. You know what a woman's disposition is. Probably he doesn't. She likes to bring riches to the house of the man who is marrying her, but never remembers or asks about the dead husband she once loved, or the children she bore him. Yeah, I think Penelope would. So when you reach home, hand over everything to whichever woman servant you trust most, till the gods send you a wife worthy of your rank. And here's another matter for you to bear in mind. The ringleaders among the suitors are lying in ambush in the straits between Ithaca and the rugged coast of Samos, intent on murdering you before you can reach home. Not that I think they will succeed. No, sooner than that, the earth will close over some of those suitors who are consuming your livelihood. However, steer your ship well clear of the islands and sail on through the night. Your guardian god will send you a following breeze. Land in Ithaca at the first point you reach, and send the ship and the whole ship's company round to the harbour. But before you yourself do anything else, visit the swineherd in charge of your pigs, who is loyal to you in spite of everything. Stay there for the night, and send him to the city to give your wise mother, Penelope, the news that you are back from Pylos and safe." Her message delivered, Athene left for the heights of Olympus. Telemachus roused Nestor's son from his sweet sleep with a kick and said, "Wake up, Pisistratus. Harness the horses to the chariot and let's be on our way." "Telemachus," his friend replied, "how eager we may be to start, we cannot possibly drive in complete darkness. It'll soon be dawn. Wait and give the famous spearman Menelaus the chance of putting some presents for us in the chariot and sending us off with a friendly farewell. All his life a guest remembers the host who has treated him kindly." Soon Dawn mounted her golden throne, and Menelaus of the loud war cry rose from sleep beside Helen of the lovely hair and made his way towards them. When Odysseus's heroic son saw him coming, he hastily drew his shining tunic on, threw his great cloak across his sturdy shoulders, and went out to Menelaus and greeted him. "Menelaus, son of Atreus, favourite of the gods, sovereign of your people. Please let me return to my own country. I am longing to be home."
"Telemachus,"
Menelaus of the war cry replied,
"I will not keep you here long if you wish to get back. I disapprove of any host who is either too kind or not kind enough. There should be moderation in all things, and it is equally offensive to speed a guest who would like to stay and to detain one who is anxious to leave. Treat a man well while he's with you, but let him go when he wishes. However, do give me time to bring you some presents and pack them in your chariot. They will be fine ones, as you will see for yourself, and let me tell the women to get a meal ready in the hall. There's plenty of food in the store. It is a glorious privilege to travel far and wide in the world, but you must have a meal first. Perhaps you would like to make a tour through Hellas and the Argive country, in which case I would provide the chariot and horses and serve as your guide to the various cities. Nobody would send us away empty-handed. We can count on each of our hosts for at least one gift, a bronze tripod or a cauldron, a pair of mules or a golden cup.
Menelaus, son of Atreus, favourite of the gods, sovereign of your people, the sensible Telemachus answered, I really am anxious to return at once to my own home, for when I set out I left no one in charge of my property. In the search for my godlike father I don't want to lose my life, nor do I want to lose any valuable heirlooms from my house.
When Menelaus of the loud war cry heard this, he at once told his wife and the servants to prepare a meal in the hall from the plentiful supplies in the palace. At this moment, Boethus' son, Eteoneus, who lived nearby and had just got up, arrived and was told by Menelaus to light the fire and roast some meat. Eteoneus obeyed his instructions, while Menelaus, in company with Helen and Mecapenthes, went down to the aromatic storeroom. When they had reached the place where the treasures were kept, Menelaus picked out a two-handled cup and told his son Megapenthes to collect a silver mixing bowl. Helen meanwhile went to the chests, which contained her elaborately woven dresses, the work of her own hands, and from them, great lady that she was, she lifted out the longest and most richly decorated robe, which had lain underneath all the rest, and now glittered like a star. They then made their way through the house and found Telemachus.
It is my earnest hope, Telemachus,
said auburn-haired Menelaus,
that Zeus the Thunderer and husband of Hera will make your homecoming all that you desire. By way of presents, you shall have the most beautiful and most precious of the treasures that my palace holds. I am giving you a mixing bowl of wrought metal. It is solid silver with a rim of gold and was made by Hephaestus himself. I had it from the king of Sidon, the Lord Phaedimus, when I stayed with him on my journey home, and now I wish it to be yours.
The hero Menelaus then handed him the two-handled cup, while his valiant son Megapenthes brought forward the shining silver bowl he had been carrying and set it before him. Helen of the lovely cheeks stood by with the robe in her hands and said,
Look, dear child, I too have a gift for you here, a keepsake from Helen, made by her own hands. It is for your bride to wear when the longed-for day of your wedding arrives. Till then, let it be kept in your mother's room. And now I wish you a joyful return to your own country and your fine house.
With that, Helen handed the robe to Telemachus, who accepted it joyfully. I just called her a hoe. The heroic Pisistratus took charge of the gifts and admired them as he stowed them in a basket in the chariot. Auburn-haired Menelaus then led the way into the house, and they sat down on chairs and seats. A maid brought out water in a fine golden jug and poured it out over a silver basin for them to rinse their hands. Next, she drew a polished table to their side, and the faithful housekeeper brought some bread and set it by them with a choice of delicacies, helping them liberally to all she could offer. Eteoneus was there to carve and serve the meat, while the great Menelaus' son poured out their wine, and so they helped themselves to the food spread before them. When they had satisfied their hunger and thirst, Telemachus and Nestor's noble son yoked their horses, mounted their gaily painted chariot, and drove out by the gateway and its echoing portico. Auburn-haired Menelaus, Atreus' son, followed them out with a golden cup of mellow wine in his right hand to enable his guests to make a drink offering before they left. He went up to their chariot and raised the cup to them.
Goodbye, my young friends,
he said,
and give King Nestor, shepherd of his people, my respects. He was like a kind father to me when we were fighting at Troy.
Menelaus, favourite of Zeus, the thoughtful Telemachus replied,
We will certainly give him your message when we arrive. I only wish I could find Odysseus at home when I reach Ithaca, and tell him how I have met with nothing but kindness at your hands during my stay, and have come away laden with precious gifts."
As he spoke, a bird came flying from the right. It was an eagle, carrying in its talons a great white goose, a tame bird from the yard. Some men and women were giving chase with shrill cries, and when the eagle reached the chariot, it sheered off again towards the right in front of the horses, to the delight of the whole party, whose spirits rose at the sight. Nestor's son Pisistratus was the first to speak.
"Menelaus, favourite of Zeus, ruler of the people, what do you think? Did heaven send this omen for us too, or for you?"
Menelaus, dear to Ares, considered carefully how to pronounce correctly on the matter, but his long-robed wife forestalled him.
"Listen," she said, "while with the god's inspiration I explain this omen, and what I feel it portends. Just as the eagle came down from his native mountains and pounced on our home-fed goose, so shall Odysseus, after many hardships and many wanderings, reach his home and have his revenge. Or he is already there and planning trouble for the whole pack of suitors."
"May Zeus the Thunderer and husband of Hera," cried thoughtful Telemachus, "make what you say come true. Then in my distant home I will worship you as a goddess."
Then he gave the horses a touch of his whip. They set off briskly and pressed forward through the town towards the open country, and all day long the yoke rose and fell on their necks. The sun set, and all the ways grew dark. They had reached Rieu, where they drove up to the house of Diocles, son of Autolycus, whose father was Alpheus. There they stayed the night, and were hospitably entertained. As soon as dawn appeared, fresh and rosy-fingered, they were harnessing their horses once again and mounting the gaily coloured chariot. Out past the echoing portico and through the gates they drove. A flick of the whip to make the horses go, and the pair flew on with such a will that before very long they reached the high citadel of Pylos. At this point, Telemachus turned to Nestor's son and said,
"Pisistratus, I want you, if you can, to do something for me. We may well claim that our father's friendship makes a lasting bond between us. Besides which, we are of the same age, and this journey will have served to bring us even closer together. So I beg you, favourite of Zeus, not to take me past my ship, but to put me down there, and so save me from being kept at the palace against my will by your old father's passion for hospitality. I must get home quicker than that."
Nestor's son turned the problem over in his mind. How could he manage this successfully? After some hesitation, he made up his mind. Turning his horses, he drove down to the ship on the seashore, and took out and stowed Menelaus's fine presents of clothing and gold in the ship's stern. He then urged Telemachus on with words that flew.
"Embark at once," he said, "and order all your men on board before I reach home and tell my aged father. For I know only too well that he is far too obstinate to let you go, but will come down here himself to fetch you, and I do not see him going back alone. He'll anyway be very angry."
With these words, Pisistratus left him and drove his shiny-coated horses back to the city of Pylos, where he soon reached his home. Meanwhile, Telemachus spurred on his crew. "Men," he called to them, "get that tackle properly stowed away and let's embark and be off." The crew leapt to his orders, climbed on board, and took their places at the oars. Telemachus had just supervised their embarkation and was praying and sacrificing to Athene by the ship's stern when he was approached by a stranger from a distant land. This man, who had fled from Argos after killing a man, was a seer descended from Melampus. Melampus had at one time lived in Pylos, the land of sheep, and been known among his fellow citizens as a wealthy man with a magnificent house. But a time came when he had to flee the country and go abroad to escape from the great king Neleus,
the Magnificent. Neleus. The king seized his rich estate and kept it for a whole year. All this time, Melampus was a wretched prisoner in the castle of Phylacus, suffering untold miseries for Neleus' daughter's sake, from the fit of madness into which the avenging Furies cast him. However, he escaped alive and managed to drive the lowing cattle from Phylace to Pylos, where he had his revenge on King Neleus for the injustice done to him, and secured the hand of Neleus' daughter for his brother. As for himself, he went to live abroad in Argos, the land of thoroughbreds, where he was destined to make his home and establish his rule over a large section of people. There he married, built himself a splendid palace, and had 2 sturdy sons, Antiphates and Mantius. Antiphates became the father of bold Oicles, and Oicles, in his turn, that great leader of Amphiaraus, a man whom aegis-bearing Zeus and Apollo loved and blessed with every mark of their favour. Even so, he never trod the path of old age, but fell at Thebes, the victim of a woman's avarice, leaving 2 sons, Alcmaeon and Amphilochus. His brother Mantius was the father of Polyphetes and Cleitius. Cleitius, who was such a beautiful youth that Dawn of the Golden Throne carried him off to live with the immortals, and the great-hearted Polyphetes, who was made a seer by Apollo, and after Amphiaraus' death succeeded him as the most famous prophet of his age. A quarrel with his father led him to migrate to Hyperesia, where he settled and prophesied to all. It was his son, Theoclymenus by name, who now appeared and came up to Telemachus, whom he found engaged in libations and prayers by his black ship.
Friend,
He said to him with winged words,
since I find you sacrificing here, I beg you by your sacrifice and the god you are honouring, and again by your own life, and the lives of these companions who are with you, to be open with me and tell me the truth. Who are you, and where do you come from? What is your town, and who are your people?
Stranger, answered the sensible Telemachus, I will tell you all honestly. Ithaca is my native place, and my father is Odysseus, or was Odysseus, if he ever existed. But he has long since met with some unhappy end. That is what brings me here with my ship and crew. I am trying to find out what has happened to my long-lost father.
Like you,
Said the noble Theoclymenus,
I have left my country. I killed a man of my own blood, and the plains of Argos are full of his brothers and kinsmen who formed the most powerful family in the land. It was to avoid death and dark fate at their hands that I ran away. It is my destiny to be a wanderer on the face of the earth. Please take me on board. I seek sanctuary with you. Don't let them kill me. I think they are on my track.
I shall certainly not bar you from my good ship, if you wish to sail with us, said the thoughtful Telemachus. Come along then, and in Ithaca you shall be welcome to such hospitality as we can offer. With these words, he took Theoclymenus' bronze spear and laid it on the curved ship's deck. Then he stepped on board the sea-going vessel himself, sat down in the stern, and gave Theoclymenus a place beside him. The hawsers were cast off, and Telemachus called to the crew to rig the ship. They obeyed with a will, hauled up the pine mast, stepped it in its hollow box, made it fast with forestays, and hoisted the white sail with plaited leather ropes. And Athene of the gleaming eyes sent a following wind through a clear sky to speed them on from astern, so that their ship might most speedily complete her journey across the salt sea. Thus they sailed past Crouni and Chalcis with its lovely streams. The sun set, and all the ways grew dark. They made for Phii, still wafted on by a wind from Zeus, and then sailed past the good land of Elis, where the Epeians rule. After which Telemachus set a course for the Pointed Isles, wondering whether he would get through alive or be caught. In the hut, Odysseus and the honest swineherd, with the farm hands for company, were having their supper. When they had eaten and drunk their fill, Odysseus sounded Eumaeus out to discover whether he would continue his hospitality and invite him to stay at the farm, or send him to the city.
Listen to me,
He said.
Eumaeus, and all of you. I intend to leave you in the morning and go down to the town to beg, so as not to be a burden to you and your men. But give me advice in the company of a trustworthy guide to show me the way. Once there, necessity will force me to wander about the town on my own in the hope that someone will give me a cup of water and a crust of bread. I would also like to go to godlike Odysseus' palace and deliver my news to his wise queen Penelope, and mingle with those high and mighty suitors you speak of. They have such an abundance of good things that they might well spare me a meal. I should be ready to make a good job of whatever work they wanted done, for I tell you, and mark my words, that by favour of Hermes the messenger, who gives grace and dignity to every kind of common labour, there's not a man to touch me at servant's work, at laying a fire properly, at splitting dry logs, as a carver, a cook, a wine steward, in short, at anything that humble folk do by way of serving their betters.
Betters. And then you, Eumaeus the swineherd, were most indignant and said,
"Oh, no, my friend. What on earth put such a scheme into your head? You will simply be courting sudden death if you insist on becoming involved with a set of men whose aggressiveness and violence reach as high as the iron heavens. Their servants are not at all your kind. They are young fellows with smart tunics and cloaks, their hair and handsome faces always gleaming with oil. That is the kind that wait on them, at polished tables groaning under their load of bread and meat and wine. No, stay with me, when nobody finds you a nuisance. I certainly don't, nor do any of my men here, and when Odysseus' son arrives, he'll fit you out in a cloak and tunic, and send you on wherever you would like to go."
Eumaeus,
replied the patient good Odysseus,
may Father Zeus look on you as kindly as I do for putting an end to the pain and misery of wandering. Surely to be a vagrant is the worst possible fate, yet men will bear such miseries because of their wretched stomachs. However, since you press me to stay and wait for the prince's arrival, tell me about godlike Odysseus' mother and his father, whom he left on the threshold of old age when he went abroad. Are they still in the land of the living, or are they dead by now in the halls of Hades?
"You know they're not dead, you've been to Hades,"
"My friend,"
said the master swineherd,
"I will tell you all. Laertes is still alive, but every day he prays to Zeus that death may visit his house and release the spirit from his flesh, for he grieves inconsolably for his lost son, and for that wise and gentle lady, his wife, whose death was the heaviest blow he has suffered, and left him an old man before his time. As for her, it was pining for her glorious son that brought her to the grave, a tragic death. I hope no one whom I love or who has been kind to me here in Ithaca meets such an end. As long as the unhappy lady was still alive, I always liked to ask after her and hear the news, for it was she who brought me up, together with her daughter, the lovely..."
"How do you pronounce that?" "Timony."
"The lovely Ctimene, her youngest child. Yes, we were brought up together, and her mother treated me, almost as her daughter's equal. But when we two young things had reached our youthful prime, that happy time, they married her off to someone in Same, and what a price he paid them! As for me, her mother fitted me out in a fine cloak and tunic, with a new pair of sandals on my feet, and sent me off to work on the farm, but she always kept a tender place for me in her heart. Ah, I have long missed kindness such as hers. The blessed gods have prospered the work which is my livelihood, and brings me in enough to eat and drink, and allows me to give to the deserving. But from my mistress, the wise Penelope, there's never a gentle word to be had, nor a kind deed either, ever since the house fell on evil days with the coming of these vicious men. Yet servants do miss it dreadfully when they can't talk face to face with their mistress, and find out all the news, and have some food and a drink, and take back a little something to the farm as well. That is the sort of thing that always warms a servant's heart."
You surprise me,
said Odysseus.
You must have been quite a little fellow, Eumaeus, when you were exiled all that way from your parents and your home. Won't you tell me what happened? Was it sacked, the city of broad streets where your mother and father lived? Or did some band of raiders capture you as you tended your sheep and cattle alone, and bring you by ship to the palace here, and get a good price from your master?
My friend,
Replied that prince among swineherds, you have asked for my story. Very well, listen quietly and enjoy the tale as you sit here and drink your wine. These nights are very long. They give one time to listen and be entertained as well as time to sleep. Nor is there any need for you to go early to bed. Too much sleep is a bad thing, but any of the others, if the spirit moves them, can go and sleep. For at the first sign of dawn they must have breakfast and go out with our master's pigs. Meanwhile, let us two have the satisfaction of sharing our unhappy memories over our food and wine here in the hut. For a man who has been through bitter experiences and travelled far enjoys even his sufferings after a time. You were asking me about my story. Let me tell you. There is an island called Rieu. You may have heard of the name. Out beyond Ortigi, where the sun turns in his course. It's not so very thickly populated, though the rich land is excellent for cattle and sheep, and yields fine crops of grapes and grain. Famine is unknown there, and no dreadful diseases plague the people.
but as the men and women of each generation grow old in their homes, Apollo of the silver bow or Artemis comes and strikes them with kindly arrows and ends their lives. There are 2 cities there, each owning half the island. My father, Odysseus, son of Ormenus, a man like a god, was king of both. One day the island was visited by a party of Phoenicians, famous sailors but greedy rogues, with a whole cargo of trinkets in their black ship. Now there happened to be a woman of their race in my father's house, a tall, handsome woman, and clever too with her hands, but the cunning Phoenicians soon turned her head. One of them began it by making approaches to her when she was washing clothes, and seducing her by the ship's hull. And there's nothing like love to lead a woman astray, even a virtuous one. He asked her who she was and where she came from. She replied by pointing out to him the high roof of my father's house and said, "I come from Sidon, where they deal in bronze. I am the daughter of Aribas, a very rich man. But some Taphian pirates carried me off as I was coming in from the country, brought me here to this man's house and sold me. He gave a good price for me too. And how would you like," said her seducer, "to come home again with us and to see the high roof of your own house, and your parents in it? For I tell you, they are still alive and are known to be well-to-do." "I would jump at the chance," said the woman, "if you sailors would swear to bring me safe and sound to my home." They swore to do what she asked, and solemnly took their oaths, but the woman went on. "Keep your mouths shut, and don't let any of your party say a word to me if you meet me in the street or at the well. Someone might go to the house and tell the old man, who would lock me up if his suspicions were roused, and do his best to kill you all. Now keep the idea to yourselves, and collect your homeward cargo as fast as you can. When all the stores are on board the ship, quickly send word to me up at the house. I will bring away some gold with me, all I can lay my hands on, and there's something else I would gladly give you in payment for my passage. I am nurse there in the house to my noble master's child, a clever little chap, who trots along at my side when we go out. I am quite ready to bring him on board with me, and he'd fetch you a fortune in any foreign port where you sold him." With this, the woman left them and returned to our fine palace. The traders stayed with us for a whole year, during which they had acquired by barter a vast store of goods. When the hollow ship was full and ready to sail, they sent up a messenger to pass the word to the woman. The cunning rascal came to my father's house with a golden necklace strung with amber beads. While my mother and the women servants in the house were handling the necklace and agreeing a price, and all eyes were fixed upon it, he quickly nodded to my nurse and, after this signal, slipped away to the ship. The woman took me by the hand and led me out through the door. And there in the entrance hall she noticed the wine cups and tables that had been used for a banquet given to my father's counsellors. The guests themselves had gone out to attend a public debate in the meeting place, so she quickly hid 3 goblets in her bosom.
How big were her boobs?
And carried them off, and in my childish innocence I followed her. The sun set, and all the ways grew dark. We ran down to the great harbour where the fast Phoenician ship was lying. They put us on board at once, climbed in themselves and made for the open sea, with a following wind sent by Zeus. For 6 days and nights we sailed steadily on, but when Zeus brought the 7th day, Artemis the archeress struck the woman, and she crashed headlong into the hold like a gannet diving into the sea. They threw her corpse overboard as carrion for the seals and fishes, and I was left alone in my misery. In due course the winds and currents drove us to Ithaca, where Laertes parted with some of his wealth to buy me. That is how I first came to set eyes on this land.
Eumaeus,
said Odysseus, the favourite of Zeus.
the story of all your miseries has touched me deeply, but Zeus certainly sent you some good luck too, to set off against the bad, since after all these misadventures you came to the house of a kind master, who has obviously been careful to see that you have plenty to eat and drink, so that the life you live is a good one. Whereas I have tramped through cities all over the world before arriving here.
This is where you live. In this way they talked together and went to sleep, but not for long, just a little while, for soon dawn appeared, seated on her beautiful throne. Now Telemachus had reached the coast of Ithaca, and his men were striking sail. Down came the mast, and they rowed the ship into the harbour, where they dropped anchor and made the hawsers fast. Then they jumped out onto the beach, prepared a meal, and mixed the sparkling wine. When they had finished eating and drinking, the sensible Telemachus gave them their instructions. "Take the ship round to the city," he said, "while I pay a visit to the farms and the herdsmen. This evening, when I've looked round my estate, I will come down to the city, and tomorrow morning I propose to reward you for coming on the voyage with a sumptuous feast of meat and sweet wine."
"And where am I to go, dear child?"
asked his godlike passenger, Theoclymenus.
"Which of your chieftains' homes shall I make for in this rugged land of yours? Or shall I go straight to your mother's and your own house?"
"In other circumstances," answered the prudent Telemachus, "I would invite you to go to our house, where there is no lack of hospitality. But that wouldn't be much help to you as things are, because you won't have me at your side, and my mother wouldn't see you. She seldom shows herself to her suitors in the hall, but keeps away from them and works at her loom in her room upstairs. However, there is a man you could go to. I'll give you his name, Eurymachus, the distinguished son of a wise father, Polybus, who at the moment is my countryman's idol. He is certainly the leading man there, as well as the keenest bidder for my mother's hand, and for my father's rights. But as to that, Olympian Zeus in his heaven is the only one who knows whether or not he will bring the day of doom on them before it comes to weddings." As he spoke, a bird flew by on his right. It was a hawk, Apollo's winged herald, holding a dove in its talons, from which it plucked out feathers that scattered down to earth halfway between the ship and Telemachus himself. Theoclymenus beckoned him away from his men, seized his hand and said,
"Telemachus, it was by a god's will that this bird flew past on your right. Directly I set eyes on it, I knew it for a bird of omen. In all Ithaca there is no more royal house than yours. Yours is the power for all time."
"My friend," said the thoughtful Telemachus, "may what you say prove true. If it does, you will soon receive from me such friendship and generosity that anyone who meets you will call you a fortunate man." Then he turned to his loyal friend Piraeus and said, "Piraeus, son of Clytius, of all who joined me on this journey to Pylos, You have always been the most ready to fall in with my wishes. Will you now take charge of this guest of ours and treat him with every kindness and attention in your own house till I come back?"
"Yes."
the great spearman Piraeus said. Or is it Piraeus? I think it's Piraeus.
"Yes.
The great spearman Piraeus replied.
Even if you stay here a long time, Telemachus, I will look after him. He shall not lack hospitality."
Piraeus then went on board the ship and ordered the rest to embark and cast off the horses. They quickly got in and took their seats by the oars. Meanwhile, Telemachus fastened his elegant sandals on his feet, picked up his powerful bronze-pointed spear from the ship's deck. The men untied the cables, thrust her off, and rowed for the city, as ordered by Telemachus, the dear son of godlike Odysseus. But Telemachus set out on foot, and walked at a good pace till he reached the yard where his large droves of pigs were kept, and where the swineherd slept among them, loyal heart, faithful servant of his master's. Ooh, he's going to see his daddy!